right, and welcome to the Courtenay Turner Podcast. I'm your host, Courtenay, and I'm super passionate about moving and thinking. On this show, we are going to dive into all things health, fitness, personal development, lifestyle, and political sociocultural. I've always been fascinated by people, and I love learning from the experiences and stories of others. This has been a treat for me, and I hope this is enjoyable and useful for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or any way that I can make this a better experience for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Hello, welcome to the Courtenay Turner Podcast. I am here today with Brian Swensen. He is a political and corporate consultant. He has worked with many very familiar candidates like DeSantis, Caldwell, and Marco Rubio. And he is currently working with the American Gun Coalition. How are you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. So for my audience who may not know, tell them a little bit about how you got into corporate and political consultancy and how it led you to what you're doing now.
So I guess I'll back it up a little bit and start at the very beginning. I didn't just start in corporate and political consulting work. When I was in college, my first real political experience, I became politically active in college right after 9/11 happened. And that was really what got me motivated and involved in paying a little bit more attention to America, geopolitics, everything that's just kind of happening around the world. So I was paying a little bit more attention to things. And then that led me on the path, from just reading, consuming information, starting to argue with professors that are doing astronomy. One of my classes was astronomy, and my professor decided to talk about how Bush is terrible. And I'm just like, this makes no sense to me. I'm in astronomy. Why are we talking about Bush? Let's get out of here, guy. So that really just, that started
resonated for me. Yep. I remember that in chemistry class. I'm like, wait, why are we talking about politics? And why are we trashing candidates? Yeah, it's chemistry. I get it. Go on.
Right. It didn't make sense. So that started me on my trajectory. And then I had a fraternity brother who wanted to run for student government. And he knew that I was someone that was a maker in the organization and had a lot of good relationships around the university. And so he asked me to manage his campaign for student body president. And so I was like, sure, why the hell not? I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but he told me that he trusted me, and I had enough, decent problem solving skills. So I figured it out and did it. And that was really my first foray into campaign management. And if you want to even count that, I kind of did. I kept doing political races on campus after that. And then I started to volunteer for a local state house race. That got me, really starting to go further down the rabbit hole of campaign world. Right after I graduated from college, I interviewed for a company called the Leadership Institute, which is a conservative nonprofit based in Arlington, Virginia. And they go on college campuses and start up conservative groups and organizations that push back against a lot of the rampant and crazy liberalism that we're now seeing take shape today. It's actually kind of funny. I remember back when we were doing our work at the Leadership Institute in 2007 and 8, some of the crazy ideas that we were seeing on college campuses, like critical race theory and gender neutral terms and all these crazy pronouns. It's just the political correctness is insane. And we were seeing everything that now everyone's seeing in the rest of the country. We were seeing that on college campuses in 2007 and 8. And so it takes about 10 years for a lot of these crazy, dumb ideas to take hold. So, Leadership Institute was a great opportunity. I had all kinds of fun stories. Probably my favorite story was the time I met the tree hippies that were in Berkeley. Berkeley College had these hippies that lived in 3 trees on the college campus that they claimed was an Indian burial ground. And this Indian burial ground could not be used for the new athletic facility that they were trying to build. And it just sounded absolutely insane. There was no Indian burial ground, by the way. That's just what the left typically likes to use. And then I met some Code Pink witches, which was also very fascinating. So that was my Berkeley experience, and I had all kinds of random things like that from my days at the Leadership Institute. After LI left and started doing a little bit more of the campaign work in Florida, which led me to Governor Rick Scott. At the time, he was just some businessman who decided to run for office, and I was very fortunate to go in and help run the field program. And then after that, we won very close race, but we ended up winning. And I worked for him at the the state party for several years. And then I did Louisiana for Senator Bill Cassidy in 2014, took out Mary Landrieu, which was a huge win for Republicans. That was, I believe, the year we retook the Senate. And then after that, man, it's Jacksonville mayor's race, the Senate race here in Florida, where I got to work for Senator Marco Rubio during his Senate reelect. And then after that, in 2018, DeSantis, I got brought on to help on DeSantis, and I was also running the Commissioner of Agriculture race for Matt Caldwell. And then 20 was President Trump. So between 18 and 20 is when I got into the political and corporate consulting world. I was less of a day-to-day staffer and started to dive more into the general consulting. So I'm very fortunate. That's a long-winded explanation of all the experiences and everything, but I've had a lot of wonderful, very wonderful experiences and cool stories that I've picked up along the way.
Yeah, no, that's a very impressive resume. I'm curious, did you always have conservative leanings?
I would say my ideology has also evolved. I was raised as a Republican. You don't really know what that is when you're a kid.
Sure.
And so once I got to college, I started to educate myself a little bit more on issues, and I definitely became a little bit more hardened on what are the Republican beliefs. But really, as my time working at the Leadership Institute really opened my eyes to a lot more. And I would say I've evolved my ideology, but I'm a lot more libertarian on a lot of issues. And I've definitely taken up a lot of other issues and causes that really I didn't really think much or care much about when because it wasn't part of my upbringing. Like I'll give you a great example: Second Amendment with guns, right? It's never something that I was raised with, and wasn't part of my upbringing, wasn't part of my culture. I knew I supported people and their right to own guns, but I just didn't really have any opportunity to educate, to be taught about it. And so I educated myself about it a little bit more, about the Second Amendment. And now that's definitely become one of my big issues. So another example, because I just hate government and, how government likes to control every single thing. I've evolved my ideology a little bit more on gay marriage, because originally I was like, no, absolutely not. Like, government shouldn't allow this to happen. My opinion of it now is I don't really care, so long as you don't mess with my faith, and if government's not forcing the Catholic Church to do this, I don't really care what people do. Government shouldn't even be involved in.
It shouldn't be involved in marriage to begin with, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't care what two people do, whatever, be happy, live and let live. That's kind of my philosophy on life.
Yeah, no, I think that's the biggest discrepancy, is the people who want to have everything be controlled and the people who want to be just left alone.
Absolutely.
I think that kind of sums it up. Marriage is a whole, different topic. I mean, we can certainly unpack that, but I think that, it definitely, the government should not be involved in marriage to begin with.
Yep.
And, this fight to have it be called marriage, I think, is also a whole different topic as well. But so tell me a little bit about what did you say?
I said, sure, it sure is.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me a little bit about working in Florida. I think that there has definitely been, that Florida's kind of leading the way in many respects, politically. And so tell me a little bit about your experience working in Florida, what you think, how it's affecting the federal political milieu and what we think we can see in the future.
Right. So Florida, Florida actually is a really fascinating state because I believe Florida is a microcosm of the United States, because in Florida, you have people that have settled here from everywhere. You have every single ethnicity, every single, experience, country. I mean, there's just so much diversity here in the state. But it's also a place where you have folks that settle from certain regions in certain regions. And so great example, Southwest Florida has a very, very big Midwest influence. Miami, some joke it's North Cuba. But I'm sure the Venezuelans and Colombians would argue with you on that. Miami is truly the melting pot of the Americas, and it's one of my favorite places. That's actually where I live. I absolutely love living in Miami because of the diversity and all of the different people that we have living here. So I love it. But Miami is a very special place. Broward and Palm Beach, you have a lot of New Yorkers. Orlando, a lot of Puerto Ricans, but then there's also an Indian American population that lives along I-4 corridor, which is Orlando to Tampa. And then you have the Panhandle. Panhandle is also special. Panhandle's like Southern Alabama and a little bit of Georgia. Florida has a lot of influences from everywhere. There's a lot of Californians right now moving to Tampa and Orlando area. So hopefully they won't be bringing their terrible voting habits with them.
Right.
But Florida really is a wonderful state. And if you want to play in the state and run in races, you really need to educate yourselves on different ways of messaging, because you're not going to come in with a cookie cutter approach and use the same message for everybody. That's just not going to work. Some issues and things matter differently to people. And so Florida really taught me the importance of being able to have a communication and engagement with people in such a way that is more impactful and meaningful to them. And I'd also say Florida has done a phenomenal job in the political consultant class. Really, I would say they've done a phenomenal job of working within the Hispanic community, where originally in the 2000s, the Republicans were viewed as the anti-Hispanic, which has never been the case. That's just the media spin. Right. But Florida, we've always done a really good job of messaging to Hispanics. And that's because of the relationship, I think, that the Republican Party has with the Cuban people. A lot of folks immigrated from Cuba in Miami and joined up with the Republican Party, and they've helped definitely shape and influence the Republican Party in a very, very great way here. And so I think they really helped the Florida Republicans figure out the importance of messaging and working with them. And that then expanded to the rest of the nation, because then those Republicans helped teach other Republicans. And, the party has evolved a lot better and really spoken to a lot of important groups whose interests have always been aligned with ours. That's the frustrating thing is, we don't necessarily always have the best communicators, but we have the best message and really just goals. I mean, limit government, get it the hell out of your life. And
I think especially, the Hispanic community, the values are so aligned,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. So Florida, the other unique thing that Florida, we do really well is we do voter turnout really well, voter engagement. And we build a very aggressive field program that is very heavy on door-to-door banking, person-to-person engagement, which is really the most important and most effective way to turn out a voter. You're more likely, if someone's at your doorstep talking to you, you're more likely to be moved if on an issue if you're undecided than if you're getting that same exact message sent to you in a mailbox or on a TV ad. So we've done a phenomenal job of building the ground game and putting an emphasis on doing it the right way. And that's why I think Florida has always been the outlier great example, 2018 was not a good year for Republicans. And but in 2018, there was the blue wave that hit a lot of states around the country, but there was a giant red wall that was put up around Florida that prevented that wave to hit us. Governor Scott became Senator Scott. Congressman Ron DeSantis became Governor Ron DeSantis. And those were races that were won by, I think Rick Scott was 11,000 votes, which was a 0.01%. And Governor DeSantis, I think his total margin of victory was 35, 40, 42, something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was very, very close within the margin of potential recount.
Wow.
So we do a really good emphasis on ground game. In 2018, we hit, I think we hit all the target, or if not all, most of the target homes 3 or 4 times, which is really good with door to door.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, all politics are local, and I think people really do forget that. And that's so important. That's really seems to be what you're driving home, and how effective that was in Florida to really make it local and personal.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think that we're going to see in certainly 2022 is coming right around the corner, and then 2024?
I think 22, you're going to see a bloodbath on the Democrats. I think it's not going to be pretty for them. There's a reckoning coming, and I think all of the years of their lies, slandering President Trump, creating lies, in some instances, stealing on an election or two along the way. The Democrats have overplayed their hand, and I think the American people are sick of it. And some of the best things I can point to for you are the evolving polling numbers, right? So the Hispanic community nationally has started to shift away from the Democrats, where they had a pretty, good grasp on them. And I saw a poll the other day that now 40% of Hispanics now identify or plan to vote with Republicans in Virginia. That was a key demographic group that helped Youngkin just win in Virginia. A Republican took out a former governor of the state of Virginia, and a lot of that was because of the Hispanic engagement that was done by the Youngkin campaign, and they ran a very good campaign, which definitely set that was the first, I think, domino to fall for what we're going to see the next year. And I don't think it's going to be pretty for the Democrats. I think you're going to see safe Senate seats that will be a loss for them.
Wow. So before we get to 2024, because I'm very curious your thoughts on that as well. But before we get to that, you were talking a little bit about the messaging, and I know Republicans really have been kind of notoriously horrendous at messaging. And I'm curious your thoughts on why and what they do wrong.
I wouldn't say they've been horrendous at messaging. I think you have some folks that are phenomenal at messaging and other folks that are not. And a lot of that, that always goes to the, you do a better job of nominating and picking people in the primaries that are effective communicators. Maybe some of them are not always the most effective, but they're really good conservatives. So, obviously, I've always subscribed to the, I think it started with Barry Goldwater, but the Goldwater Doctrine, which is you elect most conservative to office as a Republican. So you try to push through the most conservative person for the general election. And I've always believed in that. Sometimes we have some folks that say some crazy things and their asses aren't going to get out of the general election, and which is certainly not helpful. I'd say one of the most effective communicators we've had in the Republican Party, who I believe has actually helped shape and change a lot of how the party has spoken, is Senator Marco Rubio. He's been one of our most effective communicators since President Reagan. He's incredibly eloquent, very, very, quick, very fast. He knows how to navigate all kinds of different sticky issues. So it was fascinating to work with him and learn from him and see, his opinion on things and how to communicate that. And he's very, very great, especially on a lot of international issues that matter to the international. A lot of the folks here in Miami, there's a lot of Nicaraguans, and he took very hard stances on Nicaragua. There's of course Cuba, and all the different countries around Central and South America. Senator Rubio is very engaged in, and he talks about those issues and he knows about them, which helps, with building that relationship with those voters.
Yeah, totally. I'm curious, you work a little bit with agriculture, and our foundation as a country is agrarian, and we've strayed very far from that, but there's a lot of policies that have been instrumental in straying away from that. So I'm curious your experience in that arena and your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I mean, my experience with doing the Commissioner of Agriculture race, and I didn't have an agriculture background. Sure. I was just a political guy that was brought in to help win a race, and we definitely had some challenges at race. We ended up winning by a much larger margin than expected on the primary, and it was a very, very contentious primary. But we were the most conservative candidate in the race, and we ran a very aggressive grassroots campaign that went to every single small town and big town in Miami, from Miami all the way up to the Panhandle, and we hit I think it was 100,000 miles or just south of 100,000 miles driving the state of Florida over the course of a year and a half, which is crazy. And we got every endorsement from big town to small town, from city council to sheriff. And so, I mean, we truly ran a grassroots driven campaign, and we even did a thing that's kind of almost like dirty jobs, where where Matt would go to do a day of work with somebody in the agriculture community, and we'd film it and then put out a video showing and trying to expose and teach people about how much is involved in the orbit of the Commissioner of Agriculture in Florida. So that was a pretty unique experience, and Matt also is a very, very principled conservative. And that year, was a very, very tough year also for Republicans in Florida, because that was when Parkland happened. And so Matt took a very, hard line and the correct stance, and not supporting. He supported some of it, but he didn't support. He supported some of the changes, but he just didn't agree with the entire package the way it was structured, which has now passed some of the biggest red flag gun laws in the country here in the state of Florida. And in addition to that, it prevented 18-year-olds from being able to buy a shotgun or a rifle or whatever. So you now have 18-year-old females, 19-year-old females, not able to buy a firearm to defend themselves. You have people who can go and fight for their country and join America's military at the age of 17 or 18, right? But they can't buy a firearm in the state of Florida. That's just wrong. So now in the state of Florida, you can vote, you can serve in the military at 18, but you can't buy a firearm. You can't have a beer, you can't buy cigarettes. So it's just, you either move the voting age at that point up to 21, or you bring everybody back down to 18, which I support. But so there was some things that Matt didn't support, and that became a wedge issue in that race that was used against him by Nikki Fried, who ended up squeaking out a win on us by about 4,000 votes, 5,000 votes. So, and that was another fascinating one, because during the recount phase, Broward and Palm Beach did what they always do every single election cycle, and they stopped releasing votes, and they started to trickle out votes. And that leads a lot of folks to believe that they're going to only trickle out enough votes, so that they know what they need to release to win. And that's how those conspiracy theories or truths happen, and it's because of incompetency or corruption. It's just sometimes it's just impossible to really figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But both of them were fired, by Governor Scott, and then Ron DeSantis, Susan Booker, and Brenda Snipes, and they were both removed from their positions of supervisors of elections, rightfully so, because of the gross incompetency that happened during that election. And, ironically, in 2020, with appointed competent leadership in those counties, Florida was not a problem. We actually had results out faster than everybody else.
Yep.
And we didn't have any real issues that we've traditionally had in other years. So.
Yeah. And what do you attribute that to mostly?
Adults running elections, we also had a very, very well run poll watching and election monitoring system in the state of Florida. And frankly, there was a lot of things we tried to encourage others to take on and do in other states. And again, Florida, ever since the 2000 recounts with George Bush, Florida has just had it ingrained in our political class, our consultant class, that you need to get prepared for recounts every single race, every single election. And because of that culture that has been trained into a lot of folks like myself and other operatives like me that I've come in with, because I came in, to the process right as a lot of the guys from the Jeb and George era were, rising to, either continue to run things, or they were on their way out, because a number of them have been retiring. And so a lot of these guys, really ingrained the importance of that to us. And we have carried that tradition forward of making sure that you have a well-run election and poll monitoring, operation that's built. And so Florida's also had the most, we've had the most experience in absentee ballots, or vote by mail ballots, as you'd call them, more so than other states. And our election laws are also pretty good, because we've learned from mistakes. We've had about 30 years of vote by mail ballots that have been sent. And so you have 30 years of making legislation and policy to make sure that that is the most effective and fair, and every legal voter is able to vote in the way that they want, while you also make sure that you diminish any opportunities for fraud.
Yeah, accountability goes a long way.
It's a crazy concept.
Yeah, right. So I was hearing that DeSantis recently put in it's not a National Guard, it's right. That's what some people are calling it, but it's a kind of like a militia, but he's running it.
Yeah, I mean, he just re-empowered the Florida militia. I'm not the legislative expert on this one. I just know what I read. But what he has done, and several other states have been doing, is making sure we move to a place where states have their rights, and they exercise those rights. And I think it's a very good check and balance on the lawlessness and extreme policies that the Biden administration is promoting and encouraging. I mean, to force soldiers to take a vaccine and threaten their well-being and lives, and it's just this is, I believe, a reaction to that, because the Biden administration, I think they threatened Oklahoma with their National Guard status by should they not embrace their vaccine mandate. And we've seen now how that's worked out. So the automatic reaction to that was several other states then decided to reactivate their militia. And that's courtesy of the Biden administration. So.
Yeah. So that was going to be my next question is, what do you think the hopes of, personally, I think that the saving grace that this country has is federalism. The fact that, we have a 10th Amendment and the states can fight for individual rights. And if you don't like the policies and the laws that are implemented, you can go somewhere else. The current administration is really trying to fight against that. I think our, the secretary recently said that the states don't have any authority, 10th Amendment doesn't exist. So what are your thoughts on that, and how effective is it going to be able to enforce that so that we can?
I think these people in DC are maniacs. They're just absolutely insane and completely out of touch with America. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They are further dividing our country instead of uniting it, and it's created just a very, very ugly situation where we're not even paying attention to the most important things that are going on in the world. Like China and what China's doing. You have some folks that are thinking that between now and New Year's, China's going to try to invade Taiwan, and because the timing's right and everybody is going to be focused on New Year's and Christmas, and the American media, a lot of them on the left they're bought and sold by China as well. Those guys are corrupt. You just saw with CNN the last week how Cuomo got fired for helping his brother, and CNN was probably aware of it, and but they finally got there, and so they had to let him go. But now he's threatening to sue them if he doesn't get paid his full money, which I'm sure that means he's going to expose that they were okay with him doing this because they were protecting Cuomo, his brother, Governor Cuomo. It's just that these guys are just hypocrites. They care about one thing when it's a Republican, but then they don't talk about it when it's a Democrat. It's just absolutely absurd. I mean, that'd be really cool if CNN actually covered Hunter Biden and his shenanigans. That'd be, he's actually done something wrong, and they would always go after Don Jr. and the guy did nothing wrong. The family never did anything wrong. They would manufacture stories and they wouldn't ever fix them when they were proven to be false. And it's just crazy to me that Americans are, okay with this double standard, and just don't care. I don't know if it's stupidity, ignorance, or they just don't care. It's
brainwashing. I think that's the social engineering has been laid. The groundwork for that has been laid for so long that I think a lot of people are, pretty seeped in.
Absolutely.
That's part of it. Yeah. You brought up China. There's also Russia, who's also making moves with Ukraine. And that's, so the geopolitical sphere. So as you were saying before about, incompetence and, you never want to attribute malice to what could just be pure ineptitude, right? But then there's the other side of it that, they're not for America and these things are, at play, and they're aware that they're at play and they're not taking the, precautions to protect and preserve America, which we need. Yeah. So tell me your thoughts about 2024.
I think it's going to be a very, is Biden even going to be president then? Is Kamala? You don't even know. It's such a shit show in the Biden administration. It really is. It's just, Kamala's staff is leaving en masse right now, and Biden falls asleep in meetings with, other world leaders and reads lines on a teleprompter that clearly are not meant to be read, like end statement, it's just it's like you can't make this up. And no one talks about it in the media. If Donald Trump did anything like remotely close to what Biden's been doing, I mean, they would be questioning his mental health,
which they did anyway.
And they did anyway. They did when he'd wear a tie color that was off. It's like, it's just, these guys are just
crazy today. What does that mean?
I just don't know if you're gonna have Biden and Kamala as our option for the Democrats in 2020. Or 22 rather 24. God,
okay.
24. I don't know. We'll see. But 22 is going to be a bloodbath for Democrats. That's for sure.
You think so? You think that they, even with all of the, potential ineptitude or possible more nefarious actions at play?
I think 22 will be a bloodbath for Democrats, 100%. I think it will. You can only get away with so much for so long. And then I think 24, what you will see is because there will be a Republican House and Senate, the media will spin the narrative and blame all the problems on the Republican House and Senate, but not Biden. And so you'll actually have to have another, real street fight that time. But I think enough Americans would have woken up where, it won't be as much of a street fight for votes. And by street fight, I don't mean violence. I mean, you're going to have to build a very aggressive, ground operation. It's not like, and this year you do too. My attitude is always, you don't take any vote for granted. You work at just as hard if you are up or down. And I feel like, this year we're going to do really, really well as a party. And that's not because, I think it's just because of the history of what the Democrats' polling numbers are looking like, and what an incumbency of a Biden presidency and the inaction and just general failures of the Democratic Party, they're going to cause a big Republican gain. I think you're going to see gains that you've never seen before. I think it's going to be historic, and it's also going to really be in a lot of the local areas too.
All politics local, so that's good. We need the grassroots ground up.
Yeah, so that's why I think 24 is I think it will be a good year for Republicans as well. I think they certainly have learned a lot of the lessons, of what what we can do better from 2020. I think they've definitely learned those lessons, such as building an election integrity program. You have a great example like the RNC, for example. They've actually launched an election integrity program, which they've never had before, which shows that the RNC is actually, taking this, which traditionally has been a campaign driven and centered operation. And so the RNC is now putting forth resources to make sure that it becomes an established and well-oiled machine for the 24 election cycle.
That's great. That's so great to hear. Yeah. What are your thoughts about, so we don't know what will happen with Biden, Kamala. What do you think will happen if they are not the candidates? And what do you think about on the Republican side?
Well, if Trump decides to run, I mean, we'll know after the 22 election cycle what Trump's plans are, hands down.
Sure.
We'll know. But if Trump decides to run, then only the rhino Republicans in the world will decide to run against him for Lord knows what reason. They'll just get their asses kicked. But if Trump decides not to run, you have a number of wonderful candidates, and we have a much deeper bench than the Democrats do of potential folks that could run for president.
Do you have any thoughts on who those might be? I know there's a lot of noise about DeSantis. I'm curious your thoughts if he were to, what would happen with Florida?
Well, here's my position on Florida.
Okay.
Our most recent, America's, the last Republican president, Donald Trump is a Florida resident. And also from Florida, we have a man named Senator Rick Scott, who was a phenomenal governor for the state and led us out of an economic downturn, and was one of the highest, one of the states with the lowest unemployment rate because of the leadership and business knowledge that he has, and he's doing a great job in the Senate. And we have Senator Marco Rubio, who was also Speaker of the House in Florida, and he passed a lot of great conservative legislation in the state of Florida, and really led a lot of the revolution on conservatism in the state house, and he is an incredible communicator. He's done a great job in the Senate. He's probably one of the most, knowledgeable people in the foreign affairs lane. The guy knows everything that's going on around the world. Is absolutely brilliant and a phenomenal messenger. And then we have Governor Ron DeSantis, who has done a great job here in the state of Florida. I mean, he's proven to everybody that you have, you don't need to put mask mandates and close down schools and do all these things. Right now, the state of Florida is the lowest rate of corona cases per capita. Yet the state of Vermont, I think, with a vaccination rate of 90% or something close to that, has the highest or second highest amount of COVID cases in the country. I think there's a lot that we still don't know about COVID. And so, the Democrats like to say they're the party of science, but they haven't been really, championed science lately. It's more about fear and feelings than science and facts. I mean, and it's Corona's definitely brought out a lot from folks, positive and negative. We've seen great stories of people helping others, but you've also seen some of the ugliness, and no side's perfect, but the Democrats certainly have overplayed their hand on that, and they've used fear and targeted people that are their political enemies. And you have some states that still have restrictions on churches. I mean, it's just nuts. These people on the left are just, they're absolute socialists, and they want complete control. And so, it's scary times with what they're trying to accomplish. But I think the American people will have begun to see through that. And but yeah, DeSantis, I think he also would be another great option from Florida. So we have 4 great potential options from the state of Florida, all of whom I've had an opportunity to work for. So I think Florida has obviously led the nation in many things. I would have zero problem if any of them decided to run for president. So, but outside of the state of Florida, I think we've got great potential with folks like Senator Tim Scott. Love Tim Scott. I've met him before. I think he's awesome. Dude's a rock star. Very, very good man, humble man, amazing story. We've got, so Tim could be another, Senator Tim Scott could be a phenomenal option. And you've got Kristi Noem, whose name I've heard. You've had you've got the Youngkin from Virginia, whose name I'm hearing floated in some circles. I think, first of all, it's also really too soon to speculate on it. You can do it; it's fun, right? I don't. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
No, and in this milieu, we really don't in the current zeitgeist. Yeah, definitely. So you had said earlier about, the fight of the American people, and you said you didn't mean, violently, more of a political battle and a battle of ideas, is what I'm guessing you're alluding to. There is a lot of talk, though, that, America is very divided and that they are intentionally trying to fuel that fire. What do you think about that? Do you think it will lead to anything that is kinetic, or do you think we're going to see just more of this kind of political battle, media battle of ideas?
Well, look, I mean, the Democrats were all about the peaceful protest that took place in multiple cities that burned down countless blocks and ruined countless businesses, and have shattered the lives of thousands of people, and they were okay with these peaceful protests with so much violence and death. I mean, I remember seeing a video of a guy getting beaten to death with a skateboard, and so you have this, the left that is okay with that, but they're they think what happened on January 6th, which I don't agree with a lot of the violence and things that took place. I am all about protesting and everything like that, and I think there's a lot more to January 6th than people want to talk about or acknowledge.
And a lot is coming to the surface about how much was inside and how much the FBI already knew. A lot of this was planned and staged and set up, and that's not.
Absolutely, there's that element, and you have agitators. You had Antifa that were on the ground. I mean, you had people that were pictured in Antifa rallies, in Antifa, T-shirts or gear. You had them inside the Capitol. How the hell did they get in there before everybody else? I mean, there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. And honestly, like I just want the truth, and I just want, I just want things to be consistent and the standard to be consistent.
The American people deserve the truth, don't they? The truth should always matter.
They do, but you only get half-baked truths or manipulated truths when it's one side, and you get complete lies on the other. And so if the Democrats want to hold people on January 6th accountable, they 100% should hold people to that same exact standard. for anything that happened with any of the riots that happened, over the 2020 election season, with with the BLM riots, and that Antifa ended up hijacking. So I think if you're gonna be pissed about one side, you gotta be consistent and hold people to the same standard. I mean, hell, you had an entire police precinct get raided in, I forget if it was Minnesota or Oregon. I don't remember where, but a police precinct was abandoned, and I think it was burned to the ground, or, it was, raided and, by Antifa, and they took it over. And then you had federal courthouses that had some vandalism and things done to, so it's a federal building at the Capitol, but, these other federal buildings aren't held to the same standard. I don't know, that stuff just really, the double standard thing. I mean, and it just bothers me. You don't care about the dissension that's taking place on one side, but the other you do. So I'm all about consistency. I just want consistency across the board on everybody.
Yeah.
Whether the standard is whether you're keeping people in jail longer than they deserve, or you're keeping the sentences short. I want consistency, and to some of the points of, that BLM have made, and I'd rather, I'd say just members of the African-American community. I mean, they've raised a lot of great points, that there are, in fact, injustices still. I mean, that happens, 100% it happens. You're an asshole if you deny it. And I 100% believe that there are injustices that happen. I think there are double standards. You look at some prison sentences that get handed out, there might be weaker for, a white dude than a black dude. And so I think that is an issue and a problem, and it certainly should be addressed. But I think the way that it's been addressed and handled and approached doesn't help solve the problem.
We'll tell you, critical race theory is not the solution.
Sure as hell isn't. And what's also frustrating to me is, President Trump passed the most, aggressive and impactful criminal justice reform, right? If he was a Democrat, they would have been writing about him in the history books for the next 50 years. But President Trump passed a more pro criminal justice reform legislation, a larger package than Obama did, the first black president, than Joe Biden has ever gotten passed with, his 50 years in DC, 40 years. I can't even keep up. He's the reason why we should have term limits. So
yeah, right. Exactly.
It's just maddening to me, and I think a lot of people in the African-American community have 100% been treated unfairly, and I sympathize, and I want to learn, more, so I can help, make those changes that I can. And I've always listened, and what's fascinating to me, one of the things that I'm learning a lot about right now is how one of the fastest growing blocks of first-time gun buyers in America are African-American, and they're doing it because they can't keep their communities safe. They want to protect themselves. These crazy moron white liberals want to, get rid of police forces. They want to defund the police
and let the social workers handle it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's only going to have an impact on large cities, which, inner city communities, and it's not going to help them. But the flip side of it is, sometimes in some of these communities, when they call the police for help, cops aren't going to show up for 40 minutes, 50 minutes, maybe even if at all, because it's not a serious enough case for them, or they're just too busy. And so you have, how the heck are these folks going to be able to defend themselves other than with a firearm? They can't. They need access to firearms. And some cities pass gun control laws out of with racist intentions. That's where a lot of gun control laws have originated from. If you want, one of the best people that's out there speaking about it is Maj Touré and Colion Noir. Those guys, folks can go check out their podcasts and YouTube videos. And if they want, folks that are more experts and seasoned on the issue than I am, I'm still learning. Okay. But 100%, a lot of these gun laws that have been passed have, by the left, have targeted certain specific communities. But they want everyone to not own guns because they want, at the end of the day, the people that they like to have guns. You look at history. If you look at history, any country that has ever tried to go after firearms, what was the next step? Cuba took everyone's firearms. Nazi Germany took everyone's firearms. So it's like fascists want control, and
Of course. Yeah, because they when people what is it when people fear the government, that's tyranny. When the government fears the people, that's freedom.
Amen.
Yeah, so that's the reason, and the reason they didn't give slaves initially access to the Second Amendment was because they knew that that's how you keep them slaves. If they had been armed, they could rebel, right? When somebody's got a gun to their head, you think twice about your rebellious state,
Yeah, and I think that's a great opportunity to talk about one of my most recent projects, which is
I was just gonna
Big Daddy Unlimited is one of the fastest growing firearm companies that's out there. BigDaddyUnlimited.com. They great company. They're growing at an incredibly fast pace, and they really are revolutionizing and updating, I would say, the firearm industry. The firearm industry as a whole is antiquated in how they do business, and they certainly could use a little bit of a refresh. And so Big Daddy is, I'd say they're a tech firm that actually happens to sell firearms, ammo, soft goods, you name it, they can get it. And so Big Daddy, the folks at Big Daddy, Tony and Sherry McKnight, I've actually been fortunate to know them over the years. And they reached out to me back in, I believe, June or July, or May, actually, it was May, to come in and help them launch a group that has been Sherry and Tony's passion project, which is called the American Gun Coalition. And basically the American Gun Coalition is a group that's going to be coming in and really trying to identify and find lanes and opportunity where a lot of the established players are either too busy or just may not have the resources, or may not even be thinking, in places that they can actually be focusing in on and doing. And I'm coming in as well as everybody else, and we've really taken a lot of what Tony and Sherry's story is, which is they were first-time gun buyers back in, I believe, 2014 or 13. I don't remember when that when there was a shooting, but they heard about this crazy thing called stealing your people, gun control and taking firearms, and they wanted to exercise their Second Amendment right, and they went out and bought a gun, which happened to lead to then, I believe it was 19 guns. And then they decided, we have friends that want guns, and so let's get an FFL license and sell people guns. And that led them on the path to then having a gun store. And so they truly have been living the American dream, in that they started with something simple, buying a couple guns, and now they're changing how you do business in the firearm industry. And so that's something that, I think is amazing, and very, it's a very American experience and story, because, you can just come up with an idea and make it happen. And with a lot of sweat equity, you can get it done. And they're doing just that. But one of their passion projects is in launching American Gun Coalition, which, like I said, we're going to carve out a lane. We're going to identify places where we can help the Second Amendment movement, expand with, I'd say, first-time gun buyers, engaging with them and involving them in the movement, in the pro-Second Amendment movement, is definitely going to be something that we're going to be focusing in on and working on. Anybody that's purchased a gun for the first time, and I'll tell my story on that. I purchased, when I first got into firearms, I had to educate myself and I had to teach myself. There wasn't just the years of me going off hunting or, using firearms with my family. Like I didn't have that experience. So I had to teach myself and ask some questions. And sometimes in the industry, you got folks that are, your tactical experts, and, they're just like, they kind of scoff at you if you're asking dumb questions, which, no question's a dumb question. The only dumb question is one you don't ask. And so
especially when you're dealing with a weapon, right? Exactly.
And so some folks in, their experience is similar to that. And, the industry is intimidating if you don't come from it. And so we want to be able to engage with folks and help teach a lot more about safety, gun safety, refute a lot of the gun myths that even some people to this day, they're pro Second Amendment, but they have been told this by the left for so many times, they had almost, start to believe it. So we want to engage with those folks.
Can fire themselves,
Yeah, I know, right? Damn it, my pen misspelled words again,
Yeah.
That's one of the groups that we're going to want to engage with. We're going to work with a lot of college students as well. We're going to give them the opportunity to experience and shoot, firearms for the first time in a safe environment. I mean, they're all going to get a very, very sound education. And we're going to teach them a lot about activism and how to get engaged, how to get involved into the process and make some change. And that at the end of the day is the goal. Is we want to educate people and we want to activate people, and we want to be a resource. And we also, the other most important thing is, too often in, and this is just a very general observation of just nonprofit, conservative nonprofit world. And really, I think it's just anything. A lot of people compete unnecessarily and work against each other. And that's really not going to be, that's not part of our ethos at American Gun Coalition. We have the attitude of, rising tides lift all ships. But that's only if your boat's in the water. So, if folks put their boat in the water and they want to work together, we don't care who gets credit at the end of the day. We don't. We just want to get the damn job done and, defend America and get government the hell out of our lives. So but make sure that people are also provided, more importantly, people do need to be provided opportunities for firearm safety and training. And, that is something that is very much important and shouldn't be taken for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. You're saying about the competition. It's really interesting because I do actually see it a lot on the right and I always say that, fascism literally means like a band of sticks, right? The left are very good at sticking together, no matter whether or not they have nuanced difference, whether or not they have competition inside, they all band together. And I think because the right are so in favor of critical thinking and independent, individuality and, all these things that we champion, it kind of goes against us when we are, mission driven, and we need to stick together and support each other.
So, 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, this has been awesome. Do you have anything else that you want to add, leave us with, closing comments, and obviously tell everybody where they can find you, where they can learn about American Gun Coalition? And
yeah, so American Gun Coalition, we're going to be launching in the spring. So we've been doing a lot of legwork, building behind the scenes, putting down infrastructure, all the fun things that you need to do in order to launch a national, nonprofit organization. And so look for American Gun Coalition in the spring. You'll see a little bit about us. We have an Instagram page up right now and a Facebook page up. Nothing's out there, but we have a really nice logo. So we'll have more. There'll be more info coming out about them in the coming weeks and month. So stay tuned there. But as far as me, my campaign. Different hat. My website is GNQ Consultancy.com. So that is where you can learn a little bit more about me and my experience and what I'm up to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here and doing this. I'd love to do this again. We'll follow up and see how things are going with the American Gun Coalition, and as 22 comes closer, and talk more. I would love that.
Okay, sounds great. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on.